Hi folks, Tim here, and welcome back to From 8 to 38, the Chronicles of a Young Entrepreneur. And this chapter is titled Weathering the Ups and Downs. Now, that's a little bit of a play on words, because some of this chapter is going to talk about the difficulties we've had in the last year dealing with the weather. This video touches on our personal lives just as much as it touches on our business. And I often think that our businesses tend to be an extension of our personal lives, almost whether we want them to or not, but it definitely happens. Many times we try to have a disconnect between what happens at home with our personal lives and what happens in our businesses or our employment, but that's not always possible. So today I'd like to talk about both of those things a little bit. So in our businesses, we have many ups and downs, and we have those in our personal lives as well. And when you have a down or kind of a depressing type of incident, many times the response is to curl up into a ball and just fend off the world at that point. You know, get defensive, curl up into a ball, and I mean, sometimes maybe you want to curl up into a ball and cry. Well, that happens in the business world as well. And this is where having a good mindset and a good attitude really comes into play, especially with the outcome of whatever is going on. Now, to me, I think that the right way to face something that's difficult or a trial or what we're calling the downs in this video is to face them head on and keep a good attitude. Face those things head on. And our attitudes have a huge effect on the decisions that we make, but also the outcomes of these different trials that we have. So if you have a good attitude and a can-do type of attitude, and yeah, we can work through it, you can figure out a way almost every single time to work through a trial or a down in the business world. And sometimes you have to call on somebody. Sometimes you have to call your friend and talk through things, or talk with your spouse as you get older and married, maybe your parents. So there's so many different support group type of things that you have without it being an actual support group. But, you know, I have a lot of friends that are in the same business that I'm in. And when I have a problem, many times I will call them just to talk about it a little bit and discuss it a little bit, and it really helps me work through the problem. So when you're having a bad day and something goes wrong and you want to just give up, you know, I mean, many times for us, at least for me, sometimes that bad day starts early in the morning. It could be 6 o'clock or 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. It might be the first lawn that we get on for the day at 8 o'clock, and something goes wrong with the mower. Well, that can set the mood for the entire day. And if you can't bounce back from that, you're going to have a miserable day. Anybody that's working for you is going to have a miserable day. And your interactions with your clients are pretty much going to be guaranteed that they're going to be miserable. So you need to pick yourself back up and attack this problem from a different angle. Keep a can-do type of attitude and really think about how this negative experience, whatever it may be, is going to affect the rest of your day. So will one negative thing ruin your entire day or your entire week, your entire month, whatever it may be? And if you have the mindset that, yeah, this is a big deal, it's going to ruin everything, then just that mindset is going to be what causes what may really be a minute issue, but you're just having a tough day, ruin your entire day or your week or your month. So I personally have bad days. Everybody has bad days. And sometimes I have more bad days than good days. And this last year with the landscaping business has been very difficult. There's not been a lot of days that have been just an easy float through the day type of day. We had a lot of big changes this year. We added a full-time employee, which was an enormous amount of paperwork and a learning experience. And learning experience really more than just the paperwork, but also having someone working for me learning how to give a list, to give a list to him and say, here's what I want you to do for the day. I want you to take this list, get all this stuff done, and when he comes back at the end of the day, whether the list is done or not, and then we make the list for the next day. But it was a big learning curve, and it was something that was really, really difficult. I knew in the long run it would be good for the business, but it was really difficult to figure out the best way to do it, and there was definitely some negatives with that. At this point, we've pretty much worked through them, and it has turned out to be a really good experience for the most part. Had I, on that first week or the second or the third week that he was kind of working alone and doing some things, had I at that point said, you know what, this isn't working, we're done, then we wouldn't be in the position where we are now, where I have somebody working for me who works really hard and he works out really well, and I can trust him with so many things now. Was it a little bit of a down early on? Yes, it was. But now we've weathered through that. We've worked through that. We've attacked it from a different angle and just worked through it, kept a good attitude, and now it's one of the better choices and one of the ups in our business here for the last year. So as I said, the weathering part of this title is definitely a play on words. The landscaping business is extremely weather dependent. Whether it is rain or snow or a drought or heat or the wind is blowing, so many of those different things affect us in either positive or negative ways. For us, a snowstorm in April is a huge negative, but a snowstorm in January or February is a big deal. And similarly, a dry spell in June, July, and August really hurts the bottom line, but a dry spell in October helps us get into some of the jobs that we couldn't get into earlier in the year. So it's a very weather-dependent business. As I said, this last year was tough in many, many ways. So not only did we have the learning curve of a new employee on the books and somebody full-time learning how to do all the paperwork and deal with payroll and plan ahead for making sure we could pay them through the winter. So we had all those things that we had to learn, which was mentally a lot on me, but we got through it for sure. The other things that happened this last year was we had a very late start to the growing season. We were pretty late. We were mowing, I would say, about 2 weeks later than average. This last year is when we started mowing. So that hurt the business financially, definitely a down. However, by keeping a good attitude and a clear head and attacking this problem from a different angle, I found other work to do. So we did not hurt as far as work during that time. We could have, if I had said, you know what, I give up, we're not doing any of this, we're going to wait till we mow. But no, I didn't do that. We attacked it from a different angle, and we found work to do. And we pulled us through that first couple weeks of what would normally be a busy time, and it wasn't. So we pulled through that. And then we got into May and June, and they were absolutely amazing months. I mean, it was a huge up in the business. We mowed so many lawns in May and June, and then I kind of got excited and said, wow, this is going to be a great year. We're mowing every 5 days or once a week instead of every week to 10 days. So we were really cranking out some lawns. Things were going well. And then all of a sudden, in I think it was the first or second week of July, everything came to a screaming halt. The rain completely stopped, and we spiraled into I think it was a 2.5 month drought, where we went from mowing every 5 days to a week to mowing every 2 weeks and then every 3 weeks and then not at all. So that was a big down in the business. Now, we have some lawns that are always wet, that are a real pain to deal with most of the time, but in this case, we were able to continue mowing them for income, so that was a big blessing for us. But again, with the problem solving and not deciding to curl up into a ball and cry, quite literally, we were able to find other work, other things to do. We did I'd actually have to look at my book, I guess, to remember exactly what we did. But we ended up attacking some of our off-season to-do list during the growing season, which is really rare, but that's still what we did. And we were able to get through or weather that inclement weather for us. Now, inclement weather for us versus other people is probably different, right? We want to see snow in the winter when other people don't. And we like to see a certain amount of rain during the summer to keep our plants growing and our grasses growing. That way we can mow more. But one of the things that we did, and I specifically remember this, was we loaded up the truck with those big IBC cages that you see in some of our other videos that we use for the maple. So we loaded up these IBC totes in the back of the truck, and they hold 275 gallons apiece. And I was able to put 550 gallons of water in the back of my truck and then bring it around to different properties and water for them. Some of the people that we work for have these beautiful, mature plantings that they didn't want to have die, but their well wouldn't support watering it. So we were able to pump out of a local pond, or sometimes from my well I took some because we've got a really good well. So that was one of the workarounds that we found for the drought this year, was keeping a clear head, attacking this problem from a different angle, and we found a way to work our way through it. So we worked through the drought. Well, that drought lasted right up until leaf season. Leaf season went really well. So we had a lull with early in the year. Then we had kind of a high point in the business with the lawns growing really well in May and June. They died off again in the midsummer when we shouldn't really have a die off at that point. And then leaf season went great. And we added some other jobs. We did some other stuff at that point. And then it got into kind of a wet season again in October and November. And we had looked ahead at the forecast and said, wow, if this continues into the winter, we're going to have an amazing winter. And that was something that I was really looking forward to. I love plowing snow. Definitely one of my favorite things to do. So we looked at it and said, if this trend in the weather continues with the moisture coming in every 5 to 7 days and things like that, and it wasn't a light rainstorm, it was actually a good drenching rainstorm. So all these different things happened. We said, wow, we might actually see a winter where instead of plowing what the last couple winters has been, only a few storms, we might be plowing 15 storms this year on our driveways. And that's a big deal. That's a lot of income for the business. That puts us in a spectacular spot to start the new year with. And for me, the new year is the growing season. So it puts us in a great spot to start April. And so we finished our fall cleanups and we kind of prepped things for snow. We had in early November, there was a smaller snowstorm, and then later in November, there was another small one. And we said, hey, this is shaping up to be a good winter. And if my memory serves me correct, there was almost nothing in December, almost nothing in January, almost nothing in February. And now halfway through March, we've had a couple storms. But it's been a really, really tough 3 months. And it's been hard to keep a good attitude about it, because this is where our money comes from to start off our new year, which really, like I said, is April 1st is kind of the new year for us, because that's when the growing season starts. So if we start mowing and doing that outdoor type work April 1st and we start mowing at the end of April, it takes a couple months for all of the finances from that to start flowing in. So we want to start in April, that first week of April, really strong in our finances, how much we have in the savings account and how much we have operating expense wise to start the year. Because if we're doing plantings and mulching and all things like that, that is expense that comes out of the bank account and it doesn't go back into the bank account until we bill the clients and then the checks come in. So it's a really important part of keeping everything flowing properly. And we just had a terrible, terrible winter. But again, with trying to attack things from a different angle and look at things differently, we've found enough work all winter long to be able to not touch our winter savings account. And that's kind of an emergency fund that we have set up for what happens if X. And I call it the winter fund because I remember quite a few years ago, and this is a little reminiscing, I guess. So just a fun story that I remember in my younger years talking with some guys about. We were sitting around the mower shop one year, and I think it was probably the very beginning of the year, the growing season year, right towards the end of winter, when we're all in the mower shop and we're buying blades and belts and oil filters and oil and just trying to get ready for the growing season to start. And all the guys are in the shop and we're all chatting a little bit about the various ways we run our businesses. Because the way I run mine might not work for the next guy, but it has worked well for us. And I remember talking with one of the guys. He said, yeah, we had a bad winter again, and I've got truck payments and mower payments and all these other things. And a couple of the other guys were saying the same thing. And I was really new to the landscaping business at the time, so I wasn't looked at as really knowing what I was talking about. And at the time, I probably didn't really know what I was talking about. And I was in my late teens or early 20s and didn't have the years of experience that I have now. And I mentioned to them the idea of, well, looking at all these things and looking at the numbers, wouldn't it be wise from a business standpoint to have all of your winter operating expenses, if possible, in the bank by September 1st or whatever date you set through the growing season? And one of the other guys said, yeah, that's exactly what I do. We shoot for a date of, I think his was July 15th or maybe July 30th, somewhere in that range. He said, we try to have by this set date all of our operating expenses for the winter. So when we were talking about weathering the winter like that and saving that money, I said, wow, that's a really good idea. So that's something that we've tried to do for years now, and it's been very successful. This year it was something that we were able to have there as a backup in case we didn't have enough work. Very thankfully we did. We were able to work through it. Like I said, attack things from a different angle and not touch that winter savings fund. But no matter what business you're in, there is a potential for a quote-unquote bad winter. And that might be whether it is in the carpentry trade, right? Interest rates are going up right now, so the new housing market is starting to slow down. Building materials are expensive. So all that is affecting the carpentry trade or the new house trade. Over the years when oil prices fluctuate greatly, the guys who do blacktop have a bad winter. And again, I'm using winter just as a bad season. But they have a bad spell in the blacktop business when oil gets insanely expensive and nobody wants to put a new driveway down because they can't afford it. And if you're making electronic devices and the market might be a little bit uncertain at the time, people don't have some disposable income and they're not buying your little devices, or they're not buying jewelry if you're a jewelry store. Every single business out there has the potential to have a bad winter. And you need to plan for that. You need to look towards the future. And when you start having that bad winter, look at things, try to figure out a workaround, and just put your head down and barrel through it. Do not curl up in a ball and give up and cry, because if you do that, you are going to fail. 100% you're going to fail. Maybe you do it for 5 minutes and you recover from it. But if that's your mentality, that every single time you hit a roadblock or you hit your bad winter or you have that down in the business, if your mentality is to give up and cry rather than put your head down, think about a way to work through it, you're going to fail. So I wrote down a list of things on a sheet of paper because there were so many ups and so many downs. I just wanted to pick a couple of the best ones. So I'm going to read these off. But I've had plenty of downs in my life and in my business life. We bought a truck that had a transmission blow out of it a couple weeks later. Well, I spent almost everything I had to buy this truck, and the transmission blew out a couple weeks later. That's a big down. A mower that we had that had mechanical issues right after buying it, and we spent a lot of money to get that repaired. Last winter, bought a sander for the first time. I've never had a sander in the truck before, and I definitely learned the hard way about keeping sand in the sander when it gets really cold, because it froze solid into just a solid brick of ice. And yeah, it was tough dealing with it and working through it, but we did. I've had plows freeze up in the wintertime. Leaf blowers blow up in the middle of a leaf cleanup. There's so many downs that we could list, and the way our minds work many times is we focus so much on the negative and not nearly enough on the positive. So you might have a spectacular day, week, month, whatever it is. Everything's going well and you're doing good, and you have one bad thing that happens. And that bad thing is enough to change your mindset on the entire day or week or month. And it may not be a big thing, but it happens to me. But I recognize that now, and I do my best to not focus on that stuff. I've got a list of some of the ups, and whether the up was, last year we bought a new truck. Now it's the second time I've been able to buy a new truck, which is I'm really happy with. So we bought our new truck last year, but the first new truck I bought was in 2014. I had to think about it for a minute, but that was a huge step in our business, was going from used trucks to being able to buy a new pickup truck. And that was a big up for me. Or buying that X-Mark mower that I talked about quite a few videos ago, where I saved for it and bought that. That was a huge deal. Getting married, buying our house, buying the piece of property that we bought, being there for the birth of my kids. Obviously, this is not in importance order. And then now having an employee that's a full-time employee, it was a negative at first as I got used to everything. But now it's a huge, huge up in the business. So sometimes things that seem negative can turn out positive in the end. And it's all about how you as a person deal with these things in your mind. If you keep a clear head and an open mind with what will work or what won't work, something happens that's a negative, attack it from a different angle, figure out what you can learn from it. You don't want to have it happen again if it's something that hurt you, right? I took a pretty good shot to the head here, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, somewhere in that range. And, well, that was a pretty big down because it knocked me flat onto the ground. But now, knowing what I know, next time I won't make that same stupid mistake. So try to learn from your mistakes or the downs, figure out a way to work around them, keep a positive attitude, and you'll go really, really far. So weathering the ups and downs in the business world, yeah, it's tough, but it is rewarding. And one of the keys is definitely having a couple people that you can talk to that you trust, and being able to work through some of the problems with them. Again, I've got Abby that I talk to all the time, and there's a couple other friends of mine that are in the same business, and we talk, I would say, at least several times a week, run ideas past each other. Sometimes it's just, hey, I'm having a bad day and I need somebody to talk to. Other times it's, hey, this went really well, please celebrate with me, it's really important. But that's a little bit of a biblical concept as well, with the verse in Romans about weeping with those who weep and rejoicing with those who rejoice. So having a group of friends or family that can kind of be a sounding board for ideas, but also just somebody to talk to sometimes, because that's what I know I need. Sometimes I have a bad day, I just need to talk through it with somebody for 5 minutes, And that is enough to completely turn everything around. So it's a worthwhile thing having a group of friends and family that you can discuss some of this stuff with. So that would be one thing that I would try to work on building up. If you don't have that, definitely try to find a few people who you trust and who will steer you in the right direction. And you have to be willing to do that for them as well. So when my buddy calls me, he's having a bad day, I'll sit there and listen. And when I call him and I'm frustrated with the way somebody parked when I'm trying to plow their driveway or something like that, he'll sit there and listen. And within 2 or 3 minutes, we've kind of helped each other out, and the day has turned itself around. So those are my thoughts on weathering the ups and downs in the business world. If you're enjoying these videos, please like, please subscribe, and please share. We're working on making it to 1,000 subscribers. I know you've heard me say that. We've had a lot of views on the channel and really want to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark. So if you can help us with that, we very much appreciate it. And if you have any questions or comments or a subject that you would like me to touch on specifically in the entrepreneur or business world, please email us, elmendorfacres@gmail.com. Our email address is in the description of this video. But again, thank you for watching. Have a great day.